Here we are. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Episode 5 here on Existential Side Quest. I'm Jenna.
I'm Kimber.
And today we are going to be demystifying debility. We're going to be talking a lot about planets in detriment and fall. That's talking about what zodiac sign the planet is in.
Yes. And then, Jenna, before we go into detriment and fall, do you want to talk a little bit about dignity versus debility? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, definitely. So these are actually based in traditional astrology. This is a very, very old way of looking at things that we've kind of pulled forward and found the gifts, the tokens of truth, the pieces of this that actually serve our purpose as modern astrologers as well as traditional astrologers. What dignity means is when we're talking about a planet that has this energetic frequency that relates to the sign that it's in. So it's going to have a much easier time expressing itself. Now, easy doesn't necessarily mean good. We're going to be talking a lot in this episode about judgment words and how we're not saying things are good or bad. Just because something's difficult doesn't mean it's bad.
Hi, Camille. Hi, Andy. Yes, exactly. And so while people like orrery astrologers still kind of use debilities and dignities, we were thinking about potentially using other episodes to explore other types of debilities like retrograde or combustion. So if you're interested in anything that's not detriment and fall, please let us know throughout this episode or later. But okay, let's jump into planets in detriment and fall. So like Jenna was saying, it's where the signs that planets can feel uncomfortable in or they're not in their natural habitat. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from, excuse the little dog bite, but You Were Born for This by Shawnee Nicholas, who's an amazing traditional astrologer, because she explains it perfectly. So each traditional planet has 2 signs in which it feels at home, 2 signs in which it feels uncomfortable, 1 sign in which it gains recognition, and 1 sign in which it feels disrespected. In all other signs, it is in neutral territory. So while I'm reading these definitions of those 4 places, you can also check in the YouTube description for a list of planets where they are in their detriment or when they are in their fall and see which of yours are there. So when a planet's in domicile or rulership, this is a place where a planet feels at home. Here it has access to all its resources, can fire on all cylinders, and as comfortable as it can be. It's like its own house. Detriment is the place where a planet feels uncomfortable. Here it will have to work twice as hard to do its job, pushing us to stretch and grow in ways we wouldn't otherwise. And then exaltation is where a planet gains recognition. It's like the guest of honor. It will offer us gifts and blessings with little effort. It likes being there even though it's not the ruler. And then we have fall. It is the place where a planet feels disrespected. It will struggle to get on a level playing field, but in that struggle will help us to honor the experience of the outcast. So, where do we want to go, Jenna? What do we think about detriment and fall?
I'm really excited about this, partly because I don't have a lot of natal experience with these things. However, lots of people do, lots of clients do. So it's really interesting to not only explore this from a theoretical standpoint, but also from an experiential standpoint. So we'd love to hear from people in the chat if you're aware that you have a planet in detriment or fall and how that's expressed for you. So for me, I'd love to start. I think we should start with detriment, even though I'd love to start.
Can we also, so I know detriment was the word that they first translated to, but I've heard there's been a shift to potentially using antithesis or exile. It's like a place of adversity. Detriment feels really intense.
And it feels detrimental, almost as if
I can't work with it.
Yeah, it's like you're powerless or something like that. Like there's nothing you can do to overcome this, which is actually not true at all. And taking it even further, there's probably a really positive reason why you have this planet in this specific sign. It works within your chart to provide you with exactly what you need in order to achieve what you are trying to achieve in this lifetime, soul growth wise, evolution wise, all of it. So again, Good, bad, no, that's not at play here. But I love the word antithesis, because right even within the definition of the word, we're talking about something opposite, an opposite force. And that's exactly where you find the detriment. It's exactly opposite of the rulership of where the planet's in dignity. So for instance, the sun is in dignity in its rulership when it's in Leo, and directly opposite of that, we're going to find Aquarius. Now, again, to jam on that detriment a little bit longer, how could we even say that it's completely in detriment? It's completely unresolvable. Oh, this whatever detrimental means to you, when modality wise, this is the same modality. Oppositions share that part. So a Leo sun in its rulership, that's fixed energy. Exactly opposite of that, in detriment, it's still in fixed energy, because Aquarius is fixed energy. So already we see this isn't exactly like a end all be all. This isn't going to blow up the chart just because you have a detrimental placement.
Right. And there's, again, lots of strengths with that. And so I know Camille in the chat said Mars is in Taurus, which is detriment. And I was thinking about the Mars placements for detriment. So Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. It likes to be in those signs. It's comfortable there. It knows where everything is. When it's in detriment, that's the opposite of those signs. So Mars in Taurus, Mars in Libra. So if Mars wants to, what does Mars want to do? It wants to take a stand. It wants to like maybe have a fight. It wants to provoke, poke. Libra wants to have everything work together. It wants peace and harmony. Taurus also wants peace. It wants to keep things simple, while Scorpio wants to go deep. So it's like, so it's kind of like, oh, I'm used to operating this way, but I don't have those same tools here. So how do I show up? And so we know a lot of like people who are protesters and like fight for freedom are Libra Marses, right? Like you see, like there's a way to kind of navigate and balance Venusian expression within your Mars. It's just different.
Exactly. And within that difference, we can also see a lot of astrologers agree it takes longer to manifest, because you're trying to kind of suss out and figure out how to work with these seemingly contradicting sort of either goals or tools or resources for getting to those goals. However, we just have to be more creative in how we're approaching these different situations with the tools that we have. So that example that you gave of the protesting, that's great. Like maybe these people felt really frustrated about that at first because they felt like they were showing up in ways that didn't truly align. Well, I'm bringing a lot of Mars energy into relationship. How can I actually find a positive outlet for that? Protesting and activism, that's a great way.
Yeah, or they can fight for friendships and relationships instead of being like, you know what, I'm good. But
like fiercely loyal.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, perfect. I think it's like they're not defective. They're just displaced almost. And so I think we can think about for detriment. Then I'd like to just pivot to fall really quick. So then that way we can just jump. But it's like they can, like a detrimental planet or planet in detriment can feel awkward. It can also overcompensate. And like, what would be a good example of overcompensating? It can overcompensate either in the sign or it can overcompensate in the planet. So like, I know Camille mentioned a Taurus Mars, and then Alicia said Capricorn Moon. I'm going to just focus on those. So it's like Taurus Mars, if they're overcompensating. So it's like, if I show up and, we're in Venus land, but I'm Mars, I might try to be more Taurus, like only Taurus and no Mars. So I'm just really quiet, silent, just not really wanting to rock that boat. I'm keeping things very simple. I'm just maybe really keeping to myself. Would you want to add anything there? I feel like I'm blanking right now.
I feel like I really want to tackle that Capricorn Moon.
I'll keep you there.
All right.
But it's like Mars, or you could be just Mars and not Taurus, where it's like you're going too deep. You're not really into the whole chicken noodle soup for the soul situation. You're just like, I'm not Taurian. I'm not Taurian, so I'm not going to do this. And you can be very controlling and not being able to kind of flow. So that's when you kind of come off as like even more awkward or clearly out of place. And like you're trying to prove that you're not this, but it's like you can actually find a balance between the two, but it's just going to take some time.
Yeah, it's not about denying the truth of your situation and trying to not be a Taurus Mars. At the end of the day, like, it's about accepting that you're a little bit different, accepting that you're going to express a little bit differently than other people, understanding that that's actually a resource for yourself.
Yeah.
That's something that you can bring to the table that other people aren't bringing to the table with their
Right.
Aries.
You have a gut instinct there for Mars. And so sometimes you may not be able to explain why you feel the way you feel or why you're fighting for this thing, but you know in your soul and in your gut that you are, like, you need to. So it's not like you don't need to over explain it.
With the Capricorn moon, sometimes I can see the denial of the moon function in some of my clients, where I have a family member with a Capricorn moon who will come to me, tears in their eyes streaming down their face, and I'm like, oh, why are you crying? And they're like, I'm not crying. Like, just, and they believe it because they're trying to be something, they're trying to deny that side. Like, they're leaning so heavily into this, like, I need to be Capricorn, I need to be stoic. It's like, well, sometimes it's okay to lean in on that and the fact that that comes naturally for you. Like, say there's an accident, like a car accident or something. The Cancer moon person is going to have a really easy time leaning into their emotional response to that situation. But who's doing damage control and tending the wounds and calling the ambulance? That's probably the Capricorn moon person who's able to stay calm and in control in that situation.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, Jill just came in and added that she's also a Capricorn moon. So I wonder if she connected to that. And then I love what Jensen said about her Taurus Mars and that it takes a lot of self-awareness for how it shows up for her personally and work with it, that it is a lot of work, but not impossible. And then I think Camille earlier was saying how protesting for self-freedom more than anything, because I think that is weird. It's like Taurus wants to be and Mars is, so you're fighting to just be. But it's like, so it's like, it's kind of counterintuitive at first. It's like, I'm actively doing this thing because I want to be able to exist as I am.
I love that that's a really nice blend of the Aries side of Mars with Taurus, because they're both very focused on self. So it's like, we talk about, like, with the first house, Aries and Mars energy, that like enlightened selfishness. So it's like selfishness that isn't hurting other people, but you really are concerned with you. And Taurus being concerned with personal resource and security and things like that. It's nice to see that showing up for you, Camille, within that placement already. You've really worked at that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about fall. So planets in fall, it's the opposite of where it's exalted, but it won't necessarily connect in the same way. So I love the visual of the planet feeling disrespected or undermined and dismissed. So if I'm having a dinner party, this planet feels like it's at the kids' table, or it's given like the kid scissors while everyone else gets to use real scissors. And they're like, no, I can do this. It's like, okay.
Yes, definitely. I really liked all the analogies we were using when we were talking about running this episode, when we were talking about the dinner table and how people are showing up at that, and how it can take a minute to like pause and reflect on the situation. I'm being disrespected right now, and reflect back on, am I going to take that as a personal hit? Or is that more that other people aren't understanding me? Is this a mirror for something? Is this a lens for something? Which is a great way to look at when we have these type of placements in fall. It's like, oh, I'm not as good as them because I can't do X, Y, Z. It doesn't come naturally for me to do whatever it is that this planet is trying to do. My Venus in Virgo, I remember learning about that placement when I first got into astrology. Venus in Virgo is in fall there. And being like, oh my gosh, what a horrible placement. And I immediately judged it. And I was like, this is why I'm so critical of my partners. It's why I show love in the most like worky ways. Like, it doesn't make any sense. However, the more I've unpacked it, it's like, no, this is just a different way of loving people. Not everyone can show up and shower those that they love with adoration and things like that. Sometimes we have to have hard conversations and be like, hey, I see you slip here and I just want what's best for you. So taking that discontentedness of Virgo and applying it to a planet that it traditionally really doesn't vibe easily with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think too, like it made what you said about other people. It's like there's this social construct, I feel like, with the fall of just what is the whole definition of right and wrong or good and bad. It's who comes up with what that is.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So it's like, is because of Virgo and Venus, like Virgo improvement. So like you might have a more of a growth mindset when it comes to your relationships. If it's like a healthy Virgo, if that makes sense. So it's just like it's really like, how do you come off? And I was talking a little bit about like Albert Einstein and his Pisces Mercury. It's like he was a genius, but also people were like, looks like a mess. He looks so disorganized. He was coming up with these theories that people really weren't able to wrap their heads around. Like a lot of people were like, this sounds good, but he was met with a lot of cynicism and like people were skeptics about it. It's like because his brain works differently than what ours does. But he was dismissed and he was undermined. And so it's really like figuring out how to work with the gifts that come with that planet. People might not see that as a strength.
And being resilient to that. Sorry.
What'd you say?
Being resilient to that exterior. Yeah. That pressure.
Right.
Say he was like, oh, my ideas are too weird. I'm just going to go do this mundane job, and didn't actually follow his true path of that Piscean Mercury and explore everything that he was here to explore.
Right. Because like,
go ahead.
Keep going. You go.
I was just going to say Mercury being about perception. So like it's how people are perceiving him. So they're perceiving his ideas as they don't get it. It's a little bit too out there. It's not concrete enough. They're perceiving him as a little bit too out there. We talked about this when we were prepping, his wild hair being everywhere. Now pretend Albert Einstein, instead of actually doing what he did in his lifetime, he started caring about how other people were valuing him. He started leaning into that and was like, I need to get a hairstylist. I need to learn about beauty products. Like if he had wasted that Mercury and Pisces energy, wasted is a tough word, but if he had instead made the decision to use that to follow more acceptable ways of having mercurial expression, perhaps becoming more Gemini or becoming more Sagittarian within that, finding ways, I shouldn't have said Sagittarius, finding ways for him to lean into what society thought he should do, he wouldn't have been being true to himself.
And it's interesting because even if he had his Pisces Mercury with his theories still, like he was still thinking in that way, but he was like, oh, but I want to try and be accepted. I want people to take me seriously. So then he was still presenting himself less frazzled looking. That compromise can really be a detriment. I don't want to say that word. Can be like a disadvantage for a planet in fall, because you're still kind of giving power to, I'm not operating the way, like there is a lot of like his confidence in his strengths came from inside of like, how I present myself doesn't really have anything to do with my work. And I'm going to keep going even if you don't understand it. And I think there's like with fall, sometimes you are over proving or you're coming in super strong because you're like, respect me. I'm thinking like Cancer Mars. It's like, you're going to like, we can be overly emotional, or we can just be very defensive of like, no, like I'm taking a stand, and I'm not like, I don't want you to think I'm too emotional. Or we can be like under functioning or avoiding. And so it's like, no, we never show emotion, or you're very indirect and when you're having issues. And like both of those are when our fall planet is not being like really nurtured.
For sure. So which would you say is more difficult? Do you think detriment or fall? Like we're talking about detriment as being really uncomfortable and fall as being disrespected, or at least experiencing disrespect.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
I think I'd love to hear what people think in the chat of like, and if you were thinking about your specific planets and maybe you have personal experience of if you've been having a harder time with your detriment or fall. Personally, I think
ignore.
Sorry. I think that it would really depend on the place, but I think disrespect is harder. Because I feel like it's harder to, it's like, detriment. If I'm new here, or I'm socially displaced, like, you know, everyone's eating with chopsticks and I've never ate with them. I almost have this out of, well, I'm learning how to navigate this. I'm
Yeah.
making weird stares because I'm now eating with a fork and everyone else isn't, but I'm still getting what I need.
Mhm.
And I think like disrespect can be harder for a planet to overcome.
Yeah. I like that a lot. Because it's almost like the uncomfortable side of things, you know, going to the dinner party, not knowing how to eat with chopsticks, and then asking for that accommodation. I feel like that's a very positive thing. You're leaning into that. You're finding ways to be true to yourself. I can't eat with chopsticks. I don't have this skill, while also kind of not hiding that. Like, you're allowing people to see, I am in detriment currently at this dinner party. Like, it's okay. I think what happens in detriment is we can go into this mode of like masking, if like that person being like, well, I'm just going to fake it, or I'm suddenly not hungry at all, I'm going to mask the fact that I cannot use chopsticks, and I'm going to hide this part of myself. Not that we need to be, you know, loud and proud with our chopstick ability, but as a metaphor, masking, I think, is the downfall, or a trap that we could fall into at detriment. Whereas in fall, I'm going to agree with you, I think it's harder, because to be disrespected, I think inherently kind of pushes you beyond masking into this almost like identification as a victim.
Yeah.
Like a victim mindset becomes a potential pitfall of that. What do you think?
I think being a victim could definitely be a potential pitfall. I think too, just the outcast situation of like, no one wants me here, so I'm not going to engage or participate. Like what I like, almost like an internalized lack of value. Like I have nothing to offer. So I feel like it's almost like your planet can become dormant.
Or it's, I like what you're saying, because it's almost like with detriment, there's a sense of, I can recover from this. I'm uncomfortable, but I can recover. Whereas with fall, it almost feels like I'm powerless over this. Like, this is unachievable for me.
Right. Exactly. And it's also really interesting to kind of connect in your aspects or the house it's in, and like, what is it doing? Because if you're a planet at fall, but the planet that rules that sign is also in your house, then you're extra disrespected because now you have this person like talking over you. It's like, okay, now it's very different than if I'm not connected to that planet.
Yeah, that's such a good point. The idea of having either a conjunction or some level of connection. I like conjunction because when we were working with the idea of either a dinner party or a house that's hosting somebody, if that, you know, we'll stick with, you want to stick with the Mercury in Pisces, and maybe
For fall. For fall.
for fall, or yeah, okay, so
Okay.
Mercury in Pisces, but say Jupiter's in that house with it. So Jupiter being the traditional ruler of Pisces, yeah, like taking that to the level of the Jupiter having such an easy time expressing itself, but the Mercury not so much. So maybe Jupiter, this is interesting too, because Jupiter and Mercury also traditionally rule signs that oppose each other, so they already have some history going on. But with Jupiter, it's like this person kind of already thinks that they have the abundance. They already have this skill. They already have this ability. They're divinely guided within Pisces. And then Mercury's over there kind of being like, well, actually, I'm having a completely different experience. It doesn't invalidate Jupiter's experience, but Jupiter's experience becomes louder, more pronounced.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I wonder, so Lady Gaga has 3 planets like in fall, but all 3 have either are conjunct the ruler of the sign. Like Mercury in Pisces conjunct Jupiter in Pisces, her Scorpio moon's conjunct Scorpio Pluto, and then it's her Aries Venus is ruled by a Capricorn Mars, and Mars is strong in Capricorn. So it's, I feel it's interesting to think like, oh, this can dominate that experience of that planet that's in detriment or fall, right? But it could also if that planet's willing to kind of share or circle back, like, you know, if this planet's feeling disrespected or interrupted, it's like if they're a good host and being able to be like, oh wait, what were you saying, and like working together, even like in a mentor mentee sort of relationship, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, it could be two different ways.
Yeah. I wonder if it's almost like the planet in fall needs some extra love around bedtime. Like they're in a strange place, a strange house. And if that planet that lives there is like, oh, I definitely can come soothe you. What's up? Like, how are you feeling? Not to think of Pluto as a very soothing planet, but if Pluto is very at home in Scorpio and you know, Lady Gaga's moon is there and is like, this is a little too intense for me. I'm having a lot of difficulty just feeling my emotions because there's so much psychoanalysis going on that I really need to focus on getting back into my intuition and into my body. And Pluto's like, hey, I'm here. Let's get you some more blankets. Let's get you some more stuff. So it does sort of rely on that more dignified planet being at a healthy expression, because I could also see potentially, I'm not saying this is your story, Lady Gaga, if you're in the audience, possible. If Lady Gaga's here, she might have, you know, had a harder time developing that Pluto, and you know, potentially it just pulls the moon down with it. Oh, you're having a tough time? Well, welcome to my life. I always have a tough time. Come on, let's just like get into this. Let's be depressed, because a lot of people talk about Pluto moon tough aspects as coming across as depression, and maybe that's a big part of that, especially when Pluto is more dignified.
Yeah. I could see that too, with just like, I really feel the sense of fall planets impacting how you're received more. Like it's just not, I think there's like a lack of understanding, which would make sense because Detriment at least shares like some commonality with the planets that is in rulership because of that mode.
Yeah. I want to jam on that a little bit more, because I in prepping for this episode, I was reading a lot from Demisha George, and she was talking about how the planet that is in detriment or fall, traditional astrology would say, is less powerful because of being impoverished, not having access to all the tools that it would otherwise, or not being respected. And then she says, thus it is subdued in its capacity to actually be effective. So it's that, to me, I'm like, this, I could see this as like a general tag or rule of thumb. But overall, I don't think that it always has to be that way. I think that there's ways that we can lean in and do that hard work and develop those planets. And maybe it doesn't come as naturally, but through that Saturnian discipline and that hard work, I don't think that there necessarily has to be less capacity to be effective, such as that Capricorn moon, knowing what to do in an emergency situation.
Right.
Oh, Andy's here too. Andy says these planets are in signs opposite their color spectrum as well.
I like what Jill's question saying, like, do you guys have any recommendations for my fall placements, Pisces, Mercury, and Cancer, Mars? So Jenna, are we trying to fix these planets?
No, I don't think so. Because to me, you can't isolate a chart to just one thing. That's the problem with even sun sign astrology. Taking the strongest and most influential part of a chart that's still only about 10% of the chart and putting everything on that. How many people truly resonate with everything that's said about their sun sign? Probably not very many, because we're just dividing up the entire of humanity into 12 categories. So when you look at something like, oh, I have two placements that are in fall, I have a Pisces Mercury and a Cancer Mars, it's like, okay, well, where are the tools for that Pisces Mercury and that Cancer Mars? Such as where's Jupiter in that chart, and what is in Aries?
And because Jupiter rules Pisces.
Yeah, sorry.
You're good.
And then also because Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo, what's going on in Gemini and Virgo? Who's actually helping with the energy that Mercury would naturally kind of lean into and lean towards and have an easier time expressing itself through? And also in evolutionary astrology, and in my opinion, I think every astrologer should think this way, but that's just me. Your chart is absolutely perfect for what you are meant to do in a lifetime. You are meant to have a Pisces Mercury. There's a reason that you came through with that Pisces Mercury, Jill. And there's a reason for that Cancer Mars. My friends who have a Cancer Mars, I don't know if you remember Mars transiting through Cancer in September through the end of the year in 2024. I remember it because it was incredibly painful and difficult. But for you, there's something within that Mars moving through the expression of Cancer energy that actually, it doesn't mean it's easy, but it aids in your soul's development in a way that you need that pungent dose of that fall, disrespect, that feeling, that very uncomfortable feeling of what you go through emotionally, and what your assertion being so informed by emotion, your action being so informed, developing that courage to go deeply into your feelings and acknowledge them. That's a huge part of your life's work with that placement. And say you had Mars and Aries instead. There's potentially a whole piece, a whole toolbox within your chart that is now missing to attend to emotions, to develop Mars through this water function.
Yeah.
Spending intentional time with those placements. That's great. Yes. Mindful, intentional time with that placement. I love the idea of where you have Mars in your chart is where you're developing courage, and to have Mars in Cancer is to develop the courage to truly acknowledge, face, and feel emotions. And that doesn't sound like difficult. It's so difficult though, right? Like, at least I feel that way.
And I like what you're talking about, like where the rulers are. Jill, if you want us, we can talk about your chart, but I want to make sure we have your consent about where those placements are to kind of explain that. But you do have clues of like, okay, what would help this planet feel more respected and valued? You know what I mean? And it's like, Jill is not bad at emotions. I will that. It's just different. It's like you express them differently. And it's like we can say you're bad when you're comparing it to a Cancer moon or what we are thinking emotions are, but it's like you are motivated by different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And it's like the emotional drive that you have to do things, or when you tune into it, there's like an emotional knowing, potentially like a feeling that drives what you're supposed to be acting on next. That's something that maybe other people would look at you and be like, I wish I had that level of knowing. So it's almost like they're wishing they had that Cancer Mars. They'd be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. But yeah, there's definitely gifts with all of these placements that eventually I think it's easy to see the gifts when you have a dignified or an easy placement. But once someone develops a debilitated placement, either something in fall or detriment, the gift is so profound that other people are like, how did they get that? How did they do that? Like, that's next level. And it's like, well, it was meant for this person. It wasn't necessarily meant for you in your chart.
Mm-hmm. So Jillian's Pisces Mercury is in the first house, and her Jupiter is in the 8th house. And so I think there's this thing of like, being careful. Like the gift here is that fluidness of Pisces energy in how you communicate or perceive the world, right? Because that's what Mercury is all about. And trying to become a more Virgoan Mercury in how you speak is not going to work. It's not going to come off as like authentic. So Jupiter in the 8th house would be a good clue, because that's kind of hosting Mercury of what will help that Pisces Mercury feel like, kind of develop that inner confidence, since you might not get it from socially. It's like, I think really being like opening your heart and embracing dark topics or taboo topics, sitting with things that we may not want to think about, and like kind of sit in confrontation with self, which is weird, but it would actually, like, you can kind of channel more of that mystic energy and trust that like you don't need to, like, you're supposed to communicate in a way that feels more.
And that more can feel like too much to other people. And that's okay. That's their stuff. That's not your stuff.
Yeah. Now her Cancer Mars is interesting because it's opposite the moon, and the moon's in Capricorn.
Oh, yeah.
So they're both, so it's like sometimes it's like, okay, well, the moon is in detriment and it's ruling that Cancer Mars that's in fall.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it gets complicated. And it's like where, okay, we have to get creative. And it could feel like a lifelong adjustment or balance, or this, it's like this apprenticeship. And so I think we were talking earlier, Jenna, about there's value in earning that confidence or like learning the skill of how to work with your planets versus it being naturally easy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And you take it for granted when it's naturally easy. We were talking about this in the context of privilege and how privilege itself, like as much as being in fall or being in debility, having these experiences of discomfort or dysregulation or disrespect can be very painful, and alienating. But being too dignified also can too. Like I have a Leo sun and it's in the 5th house. Like that is a very powerful sun. I can almost take for granted how much I get shoved into leadership roles or pushed to the center of a social group. And I'm like, do I really want to do this today? While other people are like, I remember distinctly one of my mentors in the dog world saying to me, I have tried for 25 years to get to where you are in the dog world in 1 year. And she was saying it as a compliment, but also saying it as a like, how do you not understand how great this is? But for me, I was like, I just
just am.
like to me, I was like, let them take. Like I was very much that queen that was like, just do it. Like I had a place of privilege within this dignified position. This wasn't really difficult for me to do. There are other parts of my chart that that on the flip side take more effort to push through. But that Leo sun, it's like basically telling me like your work is to be done from this position. Your work isn't to get to that position. So it's almost like looking at your chart from like, okay, where are the immediate gifts of my chart? Where are the dignified pieces of my chart that I don't actually even recognize necessarily are such a gift? Because I'm coming at this from like when people are privileged, they don't generally acknowledge, see, they're blind to it. I like kind of like I was blind to my Leo sun privilege, but then we see so much of where we're like, but this is hard and look how easy it is for that person.
Yeah.
Andy saying, I love my Mars in Cancer, especially when it's paired up with other charts well. It can get beat up by stronger Mars placements. It really enjoys being with other Mars and Cancer people. Yeah. Having
I Cancer Mars too, and I agree.
the camaraderie.
Yeah. And I think too, it's because there's this with other Cancer Mars people, we value the emotions. It's not seen as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, because think about like the advice you give a person where you're based kind of connected to what you were saying, Jenna, with like an Aries Mars, I might be sharing a dilemma I'm having with a friend who's a Aries Mars, and they're like, just stand up for yourself or just do it. And I'm like, it's not that simple. Like, but it might not make sense for them to be like, but what do you mean?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of thinking about that. Or like, I have an exalted moon, and if I'm like talking with my friend and she has a Capricorn moon, well, moon is exalted in Taurus. So me talking about like giving advice around emotional safety or like what might work for me is a lot different, and like really thinking about that with whenever we're talking with somebody else.
Yeah. Which is honestly why when those self-help books come out and people are like, everybody should read this. I'm like, well, no, probably whatever placement you have in common with this author, those people should read this. Not everybody. It's not a one size fits all. It's interesting too to think about that Cancer Mars, because we were talking about it being in fall, so it feels disrespected, like extreme levels of disrespect, almost like it's in prison is the term we used when we were planning. And it's like, okay, so Andy Cancer Mars, Kimber Cancer Mars, you guys like being around other Cancer Marses. Who likes being in solitary confinement? We want to be among other people that can kind of share in an experience, have a community. When do you need a community most? When you're trying to heal something or when you're in some really stressful situation, such as being imprisoned. Your Mars is imprisoned in Cancer. So yeah, it's the community around that.
And I like what Chani was saying with like learn things from being the outcast. So you can also be more sensitive, like what you were talking about with that Virgo Venus, of you bring, like, there is a strength, and like you have been not well received from Virgo in Venus situations. So if you were to see, like, there are other people who benefit from that, or it's like you're sensitive to who is at the kids' table once you finally graduate from it. It's like, why can't we make space for them? Or like you, it's just, there's this experience you have from not having the same privilege as like a planet that's exalted or in rulership.
I think I found the time when I'm going to mention Chiron. Are planets in fall and debility technically mini Chirons? Who knows? No, just kidding.
I mean, the wounded. Yeah, there are opportunities to grow, and like you were talking about the resilience, like it's just we need to be creative about how we express them. But a lot of people who've like accomplished a lot of great things have planets that are detrimental, or sorry, I'm laughing at Andy's comment. And at fall, because Jenna's obsessed with Chiron, everybody, if anyone didn't know that already.
We should do a whole episode on Chiron.
Oh, please no.
So good. So good.
I was wanting to, so I did think about, you know, there's certain planets that are comfortable in houses. So I'm kind of stretching the detriment in fall. But what if, so like if the sun likes to be in the 5th house, would it be like a type of detriment if it's in the 11th house?
I mean, I definitely think it could be, in the sense that we say in, this might be traditional too, but in modern astrology, 11th house placements take longer to develop and take longer to manifest. So if how you shine your light out into the world, this very important function, because the sun is the key to your sanity. So if that is delayed, it's almost as if your full access to feeling grounded and sane and purposeful is also delayed.
Right. I could see that.
That would be very painful. Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think of other examples, like Venus, for instance. Venus as the Taurus rulership, therefore the opposite house that it might not be as comfortable in, being the 8th house, and the idea of feeling, you know, uncomfortable there, or even potentially disrespected there. I remember watching Stephen do a live chart reading in Greece, and he was talking about this woman who had a Venus in the 8th house conjunct Mars, and how her entire life she's always said, I just want to get married. I just want a husband and all, even as a little child. And her whole family was like, ha ha ha, no, go to school, do this, achieve. The whole time, I just want to get married. I just want a husband. And it's like, people are not taking her seriously. She's feeling disrespected. One example.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know. I think it's a little different though, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because I think for certain planets, it makes a lot of sense to me, because I'm thinking like Mars in the 7th house, but then Venus in the 1st house. I'm like, that's not so bad. But maybe it is, because you still are like the lover in the way you present to the world.
Yeah.
It's not really, you're not in that Aries energy that we kind of put with the 1st house.
And the idea of debilitation being delay, it's rather than just negative. So there's a delay in understanding 1st house function, because Venus is relational. Particularly, say it was a Venus in Libra in the 1st house. Like, that could be really tough to figure out. We could probably do a whole episode on Libra rising people and how everything's
it's all reversed.
Yeah. Speaking from experience for Kimber.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, really. Yeah. It's interesting too, because Venus technically being in the 8th house should be okay and comfortable there, because it's within the arc of intimacy, and Venus being such a relational sign, the attraction and all that. So any arc of intimacy being 4th through 8th, that loop, technically all houses are relationship houses, all planets are relationship planets, but that being so specific to intimacy and the path that we flow through, Venus should have some level of comfort in the 8th house. But I think the intensity of the 8th house is a little jarring for how soft Venus wants to be.
Okay, I could see that.
Ooh, thoughts on a chart ruler in detriment? That's a great question. That's a great question. Oh, can I say a processing disorder? Like that could be an expression of it because chart. Okay, so chart ruler is whatever your ascendant is. The ruler of that sign is considered your chart ruler. And we
Yes.
talk about the ascendant as how you actualize in the world, how you style yourself up and present yourself out there as you continue to have positive experiences around bringing yourself out into the world and actualizing. The ascendant is also the lens with which your inner world meets the outer world and your outer world meets the inner world. It's like the stained glass through which all of our experiences, as well as everything we're putting out into the world, kind of filters through. So
Mm-hmm.
if that is ruled by a planet in detriment, the reason I thought processing disorder was because it's going to have this kind of disjointed expression to it, this delayed expression to it. And I don't actually mean that clinically. I'm not diagnosing anyone with anything. But I think, yeah, it could definitely cause some level of delay in self-actualization. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it's delayed because it's in detriment, but I think it's like, I think there's still this, I feel like it puts more pressure on there's another reason why we need to figure out how to express this planet. Like that it's delayed it's going to be a delayed response, fluency, but it's also this like, but we need to make sure we actually do it. Like there's more pressure and like the risk for if you what am I trying to say? If you avoid it, then I think that there's more at stake because it is your chart ruler. And so it's a part of you being able to feel comfortable in your own skin. It's a part of you being able to self-actualize. So it's like, okay, we don't want to just like drag our feet too long with figuring out how to express it. Because I'm thinking about if you're a Virgo rising and Mercury's in Sagittarius, so we need to figure out like what to do with this Mercury and Sagittarius so it doesn't feel as awkward, because it's not just going to be awkward. It's not going to be an awkwardness that just exists in how you communicate or think or your voice, but also in the way you present to the world, how you dawn on everyone, your style. So it's like it's honestly just like emphasizing, okay, we want to make sure we can integrate these two functions together.
You know what an exponential growth curve looks like? Where it's
Yeah.
like this is linear. This is like there's some level of a curve to it where once it starts going, it just takes off. That's the visual I'm getting for a chart ruler that's in detriment. It might take a while to get going, but once you get it going and you're really leaning into it, you're like, maybe you care more, or maybe you're not taking it for granted because you didn't have that privilege, that dignity privilege. So it really can ramp up and go even further.
Yeah.
Randall is asking, can you humor us on someone in detriment? Aries, Venus, and in fall, we have a Scorpio moon, Pisces, Mercury, and a Cancer, Mars. Just asking for a friend. All right. So, Randall, the first thing that immediately jumped out to me with this is we're looking at somebody who, by sign at least, it might be within orb of degree. We're looking at a water grand trine here. Scorpio, Pisces, and Cancer. So as much as, yes, each of those is in fall, but the moon via that grand trine, via that triangle with all those angles, those 120-degree angles coming together, the moon has a way to talk to Cancer. Just like that Scorpio, Pisces, okay, Mercury, Moon, and Mars and Scorpio. So they have a way to talk to each other. So really Mercury is kind of a little bit of the odd guy out in this.
Yeah. And I do think what's interesting too is like all these planets do play into relationships. I'm thinking like, how can we have multiple planets? Like if they're all struggling and we're not like going into the empowered version of it, what could be at stake? But I think it's also finding kind of bringing in remediation, but finding good outlets for these planets. Like at Venus and Aries Venus connects through movement or excitement. And so like a negative version of that would be conflict in relationships or needing like choosing relationships that are more like they're exciting, but they're more like roller coasters. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like you're also Scorpio moon. And so like what's going to be emotionally nourishing for you is depth. And so finding people like the very martial energy in a relationship. So it's like you need people who aren't kind of like turned off by your intensity or your need for wanting to like dig deeper. And like Pisces Mercury, like fluid conversations, like you, someone who's in, and I don't even know the houses, but just like someone who's interested in going deep with you and like kind of on this watery ride of just where like there's no end goal. Like, let's just see where are we going, and doesn't view that as chaotic or stressful, or is not going to have you like, well, calm down, or like, don't share that.
Mm. Yeah, because at the end of the day, that Cancer Mars is looking to courageously face emotions. It
Right.
actually works really well for us.
I like it, but it's like, because I even with the Venus Mars squaring each other, so it's like there's this need for tension between those. Like that's what's stimulating, and that's also what's kind of like giving you that inner harmony and peace. So it is interesting. Like I know Jill mentioned earlier, like when you have multiple planets in detriment and fall, and seeing like looking at what Jenna just did of seeing like, oh, there's a connection between these three planets. It's like thinking about ways that you can kind of bridge them together will be really helpful. I love what he asked.
I just want to say one more thing to
Yeah.
Randall.
Yeah.
Last thing, also having alternative outlets. These are very like it's easy to see the relationship play out in here, but that Aries Venus, it might need something to cool off. So like the art side of Venus. So I'm thinking of John Lennon specifically and his Aries Venus, and the fact that he used his music as a form of fighting for peace, fighting to return to Venusian serenity. So if the relationship you're getting a little too Scorpio, a little too intense, finding a different outlet to kind of cool off a little bit so that you can come back as your highest self, still intense,
Right.
but come back
Whether
refreshed.
it's art or it's like exercise, something like, because Venus can also be like stress relief. So I think that makes sense. And how, even Cancer Mars, I think that could be the need to release energy in a way that feels good, like self-care would be
Yeah.
good. That's
So
awesome.
Andy, go ahead.
Oh, I like Andy's question. So when do we take, so there's the modern stance of every placement is good for some things, so kind of minimizing bad. And then when do we take the traditional stance of weak planets are less manifested, less good, etc.?
That's such a good question, because for me, every placement is good for something. 100%. I take that approach constantly in the same way of every chart is exactly what it needs to be to do what you're trying to do in your lifetime. What do you think, Kimber, about that part?
I agree that every planet has a purpose, or like there's a higher path available. But, and I was looking at, kind of connecting to Jensen's question, but I was like looking at different charts of different celebrities, and a lot of the celebrities who were notorious were actually like their ruler was in rulership. So I do see, even though it's like rulership traditionally is seen as more manifested and more like it's better, I saw like it can come in hot. So it's almost like, I don't know if I'm saying every placement is good. I think that those planets in domicile or in rulership can go a little unchecked and are more likely to overfunction in a negative way. So I don't know. I don't think it's helpful to be like giving a watered down version of every placement is good, because the point is that there are going to be placements that are challenging, and we should be naming that this is an opportunity, and also not minimizing. Yes, it's going to be a little bit more challenging for someone who has multiple planets that are like connected and have more detriment, more fall than someone who has one planet while they have a lot of other planets that are exalted. So it's like, you can't just like, yes, this is going to be more challenging than if it were not this way. There are opportunities to grow from that. And so I think maybe that's the modern part of like, this challenge can be positive.
Yeah. Like every placement, I'm backtracking and agreeing about the word good. That slipped right through the cracks.
Yeah, it's hard.
Words there, but it's like saying every planet has a positive expression, a higher expression, and a lower or a more shadowy expression. And every planet within every zodiac sign within every house, same thing. So understanding what makes it either more challenging to get to those high expressions or those lower expressions, that's when we start rolling in tools like what we're talking about right now, dignities and detriment and fall and debilities, so that we can start to get a feel for what might be more difficult about this and what might be the path to opportunity that is unique to this placement that wouldn't necessarily fit if the dignity was something else.
Right. Now, I think when I'm looking at electional astrology or orrery charts, I think looking at the traditional stance of this is bad makes sense, but those are specific event charts.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm looking at a natal chart, it's different. And it's also, I think we talked about this before, but it's like when I'm meeting with a client, I don't say, oh, this planet's in detriment or this planet's in fall.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to know. And I definitely will talk about like the challenges of this planet or like what this planet's inviting you to do. This, it might be a planet that we need to work on integrating, but there's a lot of power in that and weight in that word. And I know Jensen was talking about like, it's a lot of work, but it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, underrepresent the work involved with the planet. But I think when you hear the word detriment and you're already in this vulnerable state of having your chart being read, it's easy to be like, that's impossible, or that's bad, or like you somehow have a bad chart. And I don't like that feeling of like that you're doomed.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And it's also like, intelligently, why would the universe want to give you a planet that takes longer to express? Maybe there's a actual reason behind that. Maybe it's not meant to be something that you manifest at this point in your life. There's other things that want to come first. Because if you spent too much time manifesting that 11th house sun or that Cancer Venus or whatever it is, maybe you'd miss some opportunities along the way that were actually meant to kind of go first.
Yeah. And I do think, yeah, exactly.
It just leads into Andy's next question, which is, and when do you take the traditional stance of weak planets are less manifested, or judgment word, less good? And I think that is kind of what we're talking about with, we're not going to say that they're necessarily less manifested. That could be an expression of it. It just takes longer to potentially get them going and figure them out.
Right. And I think too, like thinking about the history of astrology, like traditionally, a lot of it was used like when we're looking at noble men, and maybe it was less manifested if you're a king, right? Like it's just we're not just studying like certain roles and trades now with specific charts. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. The idea of free will has pretty much always existed, but how much free will we have now to move about the world even is so different than even a couple hundred years ago.
And like for advancement, I'm all about like, we need all types of people and different brains. And like, we need Sagittarius Mercury and Pisces Mercury because to be creative, to think outside of the box, like we need everybody. Like we need Aquarius suns who are thinking about the collective, and like especially right now given like the current state of the world. Last thing I want to end on it, so we might go like 3 minutes over, because you brought it up. Transiting planets. So Saturn is entering Aries, so Saturn's going to be in its fall. So not thinking about our own birth charts, but like, what does it mean for when planets are moving into or out of a sign that they're really strong in or they're weaker in?
Yeah. What's interesting about Saturn moving into Aries is that it's moving in within a conjunction. So it's moving in step with Neptune, and they're moving from Pisces, which Neptune is very strong in and Saturn is not, into Aries. And now Saturn is the one that's actually leading the way. That's more hosting, or the host of the energy, if you will.
Yeah. And I think too, like, but what do we think it's going to be like? Or what is that like? What's the invitation for us in the moving sky? Because I'm like thinking Saturn is controlled. Saturn is responsible. It's measured. And Aries is like, boom, like let's do this, moving forward. brave, like, but it's very much like we're going now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
And
yeah,
if Saturn's feeling disrespected because being in fall in Aries, how is that going to manifest? Is Saturn going to try even harder? Is Saturn going to potentially have the temptation of falling back into Aries lower expressions, which are, victim mentality or being a bully, overdoing it on the Aries energy?
yeah, like, and like just kind of like this cynical view, I guess. I mean, I'm thinking about America right now, but I wonder with, this Aries like wanting to fight or take a stand against things that are happening, but there's also this, are we going to feel frustrated? Like, is it going to be a long time of this, but we're not going to see the results of us like speaking out or doing something?
Mm-hmm.
Are we like, is it going to be like finding this balance between the elder responsible energy and almost like, is there a time for recklessness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I wonder what that can feel like, of just, you know what I'm saying?
With I have to bring up Uranus, and it's
Yeah.
ingress into Gemini, and it's going to be making that sextile, that excitation angle to this Aries energy with Neptune and Saturn there. And I really think it's that shocking, upsetting events right there that sometimes transiting Uranus can bring in, and it's like asking us to really work with this kind of uncomfortable conjunction in Aries. Saturn doesn't super want to be there, and Neptune just had this like fanfare of over a decade of being in the sign it rules, and now it's like jolted into this sign that it very much does not have an easy time expressing itself in. So Uranus being like, hey, everyone, wake up, we're still working, we're still doing stuff, kind of. And I'm not saying that Uranus is saying that necessarily to Neptune and Saturn, but rather saying that to our little frequency bodies here on Earth, kind of shocking us into like, all right, it's time to wake up from our Piscean dream that Neptune was really
Yeah.
powerful through.
And I could see Saturn and Aries definitely being like F around and find out, because like if it feels disrespected, it's like, I'm trying to follow the rules. I'm trying to like let this happen. But if we keep poking, it's like, but I can react and respond. Sorry to bring up politics into astrology, but the Aquarius in me cannot be quiet sometimes.
Oh, we have so much more we could say too. I really wanted to talk about your experience as an Aquarius sun moving to a place where you're an outcast, but
I really am glad we talked about everyone in the chat though. Like that was really, so.
We really appreciate everyone commenting, just listening. Thank you so much for being here. Next week we had planned. Do you want to continue talking about things like this, or what do you think, Kimber?
I think I'm open to, if anyone has any suggestions, you can always email us. I think we put that in the description. We were thinking about moving on to reading people's charts without their consent. Is that emotional surveillance? Is that controlling? Where's the ethics there? So if really interested in like what people would be wanting to hear from us.
Yeah. Let us know.
Yeah.
We'll plan a couple days ahead. So thank you everyone for joining us. And you can find us online on our website, on Facebook. We're all over. So awesome. Thanks everyone.
Bye.